Awesome. Now look at you. Oh yeah. Building my prediction. Running all.
I will.
They resist.
She says, you give me 2 hours wait on mine because I'm flying on Monday. She goes, take that ticket because she goes, the mayor is opening up the city on July 1st. 100%. Those tickets will skyrocket.
Yeah, no.
You know what? I think
Oh. What are you going to do with it? Exactly. Yeah. That's a good thought, yeah.
I'm all set. That's keeping me really busy. So.
Hey, sweetie, how are you?
I was surprised. Were you on that call yesterday? There was 19 people on there. You guys are kind of used to it. We started with Carol.
I was like, yeah, I went in. I was like, oh.
There. Oh, it's not big enough. We got to go to the beach. The beach isn't in the Carol. Hey, Glenn, how are you? Thank you for being involved in that call yesterday. Yeah, you know. One of the top 5. But she, I think, got a good
potential business to make money on it.
Well, you know what's happening? I wonder which one is. You know, lawn. Yeah,
Did you guys figure out? We were working on. I thought conveniently it looked to me like
big boy, the big
about 15 an hour.
He's got a
The
tremendous
equivalent weekly if you got both. If you got federal and state.
Yeah.
So if you want to push a $15 an hour minimum wage, effectively do it.
Well, you know, we had the guy from The Voice in Allen.
Hey, for the guys, let's stay at home.
Yeah, he's good.
Yes.
Tucker had a really good take on it. The box guy.
I think it's because he was taught.
It's not necessarily that they're lazy. They're smart. Especially if you have kids. Why would you pay somebody to watch your kids go in and make the same amount of money as make staying at home watching? I don't know when it's going to give up.
Right?
They stopped with the federal.
Federal side. Right now there's state and federal.
Can they Yeah, a buddy of mine pointed that out. Another buddy from the beach. He said, when's the last time they ever called you to see if somebody actually came by to interview for a job? Like, never. He goes, exactly. So that's just a bunch of BS.
All right, I guess I'll get us fired up.
The idea that that's proof.
Everybody ready?
Where's your office?
Ooh, that's loud. Hey. Usually this gavel's a little weaker than that. Good morning. Let's go ahead and take our seats and get ready for the meeting. I'll call to order the Tourist Development Council meeting for May 13th, 2021. I didn't even see. Is Tam coming? She's on her way. Okay, great. Well, we can take care of the ceremonial stuff. Let's all, now that we've sat down, rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated, and please call the roll.
Commissioner Brian Hammond.
Here.
John McLean.
Here.
Fran Myers. Rexanne Hossafrost.
Here.
Pamela Cronin.
Here.
Tony Lappy.
Here.
Phil Wachulis.
Good morning.
Brian Kramer. Rob Wells.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. So the minutes are available and have been available for review. Does anybody have any discussion or questions or concerns about the minutes from the last meeting? No?
Make a motion, we approve them.
We have a motion for approval from Mr. Lappy. Do we have a second? Second from Councilman McLean. Any discussion on that? Anybody in the public have any problem with the minutes or want to say anything about that? Okay. Any objection to the motion then? Seeing no objection, the motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time, we will take the public to be heard. Could you raise your hand if anybody in the public wants to speak this morning? Okay, well, seeing none, then we'll move to municipalities to be heard. And Mayor Smith, go ahead and take the podium.
Good morning, everyone. Mayor Holly Smith for the record. I have a couple of items that I'd like to just touch on. The first, I'll be brief because I'm sure it's going to be being covered within the council. We did have a visit from Governor DeSantis yesterday with a business roundtable regarding water quality. It was very well received, and I was very impressed that the governor did come over because we know that water quality is top of mind here as we are going into this summer, and we want to make sure that we don't have a repeat, or hopefully we don't have a repeat, of what happened in 2008. So there will be more on that, I believe, at the table, so I don't want to take that away from any of those that might have attended that. Most importantly to me today, as many of you read in front page news, as was appropriate yesterday, our city manager of nearly 20 years has decided that she is going to be having her retirement plan taking effect September 24th. We as a municipality could not be more proud of the work that Judy has done. Her incomparable dedication to our island, to Lee County as a whole. As you all know, many of you have worked with her for all of those years. So this is a big shoes to fill, and we'll look forward to having the next few months with the city manager. But with that, I thought she might want to say a few words. But thank you, Judy.
Thank you. I just would like to thank the TDC for all the work and partnership we've been able to accomplish so much over the last 2 decades. I've never missed coming on the days where we've had funding, and today I'm very happy to see on the agenda the approval of the city and all the communities' beach and shoreline allocation. A year ago, I think there was concern we would have sufficient funds to allocate to the next year of tourism and travel, and this is a great day to see the rebound, the re-energizing of the area. I know how committed our mayor and our council is, as well as our partners at the county, on doing everything we can to make certain that there's not action this summer that really takes a big step back on water quality, and we're right at the brink of that now. I know everyone realizes that. By the time I do retire, it will be 20 years, and in city management years, that's about 180. So it's been an honor for everything I've done while I've been here, but particularly working with the TDC, and of course, Tam, you all know, has just been an outstanding partner for the city of Sanibel, not just on the good days, but through the hurricanes and the economic downturns and the red tide incidents, and they go on and on. So thank you for the opportunity to come in front of you today and every day. Thank you, Commissioner.
And Judy, congratulations, and thank you for your service, and we really wish you the very best. We know you'll be around for a few more months, though, but that's awesome. Congratulations. Very good. All right. Are there any other municipalities to be heard while we're here? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward to the report of the Executive Director, Ms. Pygott.
Good morning, and it would be negligent if I didn't say that, Judy, it's been a pleasure to work with you. I think we've done probably as much together as could happen in 20 years. I hope the next 20 for you are much quieter, and our community as well in many ways. So let's start with bed tax. No surprise, the March bed tax compared to last year is a very large increase, 45.7% up. You will remember the stay-at-home notice came on March 17th last year. But for the purposes of the next few months, I think we're going to compare everything to 2019 because I think that's the appropriate thing to do. So as you see, that's a slight dip over 2019, but pretty proud of that rebound. That's pretty amazing, only 3.1% down for the month of March. In terms of bed tax collection,
Was the best year ever, right?
19 was the best year ever, correct. And even more importantly, when you look at fiscal year to date, of course, as we have seen things improve a bit during the pandemic, not a surprise to see us finally bounce back over 2020. This is the first month you see an increase versus 2020 because, as you'll remember, when we started last fiscal year, we were on a bang until we got to March. And so up 0.7% compared to 2020 at almost 7 million. But more importantly, up 4.1% to FY19. So I think it's just important to put that in context. I will remind you, though, we did start FY19. That was the end of 2018. We were coming off the really rough red tide. Those first couple of months out of the gate were a little rough. But if things continue the way they are, and there's a lot of ifs in that conversation, we actually have capacity for this to be the best year ever in terms of bed tax collection. So that's hard to believe given everything we've been through and the impact the pandemic has had on tourism. In terms of the STAR report, again, the same kind of thing. You're going to see the year-over-year numbers very strong. Occupancy at 81.1%, ADR at nearly 125, and RevPAR at 82.47. 182, excuse me, and 47 cents. An increase over 2020, but not up to the standard of 2019. In terms of the key data, and this is the vacation rental data, you will see also increases there. As I have mentioned a couple of times, the vacation rentals have performed overall better during the pandemic than we have seen on the hotel side, and as you see, just a smidge off of 2019 in terms of occupancy, but holding very strong on rate. In fact, an increase in rate over 2019, and just a smidge down overall on the RevPAR.
So real quick, that for your stats and your total bed collection, you really could just look to the 1.9% in ADRs overcoming basically any other of the flat numbers as to why you had a little better collection.
Yeah, it is a big indicator. You know, the vacation rental is a significant portion of our bed tax collection. You know, even in that real estate category, when we look at that, it's, you know, over 40% sometimes. And then remember, even in the municipalities, some of those are vacation rentals appropriately allocated to the appropriate area. So it is a significant portion. It's depending on the time, you know, and you know, with the way vacation rentals now work because of Airbnb and VRBO, we can have 15,000 vacation rental units in the community at any given time. But I don't know that that's 15,000 on an annualized basis because, you know, that changes on a daily basis. But it is a significant portion. And you see the ADR number. It's a much higher number, of course, to rent a house than it is to rent a room. So it's a big driver of bed tax collection for sure.
Thank you.
Sure. In terms of passenger traffic, big increase for the month of March. Great news for the airport, 1.16 million passengers through the airport. But comparing that to 2019, down a little over 20%. And then for the year to date at the airport, down 20% versus 2020, and down 29.5% as compared to 2019. And now I'm going to ask Joseph St. Germain from Down St. Germain to give us the first quarter research report and also a few slides at least from our most recent consumer sentiment research.
All right, thank you, Tamara, and thank you all for having us. Again, my name is Joseph St. Germain. I'm the president of Downs and St. Germain Research. We're going to go through January through March report and then a few slides from the consumer sentiment. Again, it's not the full report, for the sake of time, and I want to save some room for questions if you have any. Just to set the scene again, we're talking January through March 2021. We're going to make some comparisons to 2019, which was a more normal year. 2020, as Tamara mentioned, January through March, we had 2 great months, and then the bottom fell out as the pandemic kind of joined us. And then 2021, we've really starting to come back, but that strong comeback that we've seen recently didn't really start till late March. So we still had some January and February where we're kind of ramping up, but we're not quite there. But overall, some positive news in general. And then when we start to look at the consumer sentiment, you'll see some really positive news. Again, as we do these reports, we walk through the visitor journey of how they plan, what they look like, where they're from, what they did when they were here, what was our report card, did they enjoy their trip, and then finally the economic impact. But we like to start at the end because everyone wants to see those figures. As we look at 2021 versus 2020, room nights were down only a little bit. Spending was down 7%. The number of visitors were down by a larger number, 16%. Just one thing I want to point out with the visitation, people staying in paid accommodations was down slightly. The bigger drops is people staying with friends and relatives and day trippers. So the good news there is that the type of visitor who are spending more money, people staying in paid accommodations and paying bed tax, those were down not nearly as much. That's why spending isn't down as much as total visitation is down. As we compare it to 2019, not quite as strong. But the metrics you still see down a little bit compared to our last full normal quarter, if you will. The one thing I think we'll see, especially looking at the metrics Tamara just went through, I think moving forward we'll start to see much better figures as as those who have lived and worked in it the last couple months has gotten close to as normal as we've seen in a minute. As we look at the overall metrics, occupancy was actually up year over year. Again, those visitors staying in paid accommodations were still fairly strong year over year, but we saw slight decreases in ADR and RevPAR. Again, this is for January through March, not just March. As we look at how they planned their trip, half of them planned at least 3 months in advance. We still had a shorter trip planning cycle. That was during much of the pandemic. We saw shorter trip planning, but this has started to expand again, and people kind of doing their long-term planning. And just as I listened to folks kind of chatting before the meeting, this is especially true in some of our beach destinations. I heard some people are trying to plan a year out and things of that nature. We still have significant numbers or more people asking for information, whether it be from the hotels, from the VCB, TDCs, what have you. People are still looking for more information because even the folks who are loyal visitors who've been here many, many times, they still need to know what's open, what's not, is there anything limited, that type of thing. And this is especially important for folks from the Midwest and the Northeast who live in a world that hasn't been as open as we've experienced here in Florida. And then finally, about 80% of your visitors really, when they considered their trip, they were just coming here, but about 1 in 5 considered other destinations before ultimately selecting here. Why did they come? Vacation, the beach, relax and unwind. That was the top ones. 1 in 5 also came to visit their friends and relatives. So even though I said visit friends and relatives are down a bit, it's still an important part of why people come. In terms of ad promotions, a little over 1 in 3 noticed an ad, and their top where they notice those ads are on the internet, so your digital and social. That's where they're seeing most ads for those who have seen it. In terms of transportation, we've really gotten back to flying a lot. 3/4 of your visitor flew. Over half of your visitors who came here are coming through RSW. So that shift, that the last time I presented, I said, hey, people are saying they're more willing to fly. Now we're starting to see it in behavior, which is great to see, because not all sentiment doesn't always match up with behavior, but we've really seen it in the tourism space. As we look at your visitor, where they are coming from, the Midwest is not only is where most of them are coming from, it's a larger piece of the pie. As someone who grew up in the Midwest, I can understand the appeal of coming down here in January through March. So I can see where that's coming. But the one thing I did want to point out there, the Midwest has been slightly more open than the Northeast, which we've seen in general, which made them a little bit more likely to travel in January through March. So that's why I think the Northeast, in terms of percentage, is lagging a little bit behind the Midwest as we go. As we look at origin markets, you'll notice a lot of Midwest cities: Minneapolis, Chicago, Columbus, Detroit, etc. So you had a lot of people coming from these big cities. In fact, when we looked at this versus last year, it was a little bit more dispersed. You know, there wasn't really many markets above 5%. That really kind of, to me, points up these pent-up demand of folks who are living in cities where cities have been a little bit more restricted, so that they were a little bit more likely to come down here in an open environment. The travel party, around 3.6 people, around a third of them are traveling with children. The most likely type of visitor was a family, followed by couples, with each of those about 2 and 5. So that's kind of really your bread and butter. We're hoping to see business travel come up a little bit, but that has been lagging behind leisure travel in general. What did they do when they were here? January through March generally comes with a longer length of stay, whether it be snowbirds or people just trying to get out of the Midwest, the Northeast, or what have you for longer periods of time. Great news, over 1 in 4 were here for the first time. That's always good to see a good number coming for the first time, but you definitely do have loyal visitors. About 1 in 5 have come at least 10 times. Visitor activities, January through March, the beach and relaxing, those two are a lot of times synonymous in some ways. In our office, we kind of say sometimes the beach is the physical manifestation of relaxation to a lot of travelers, but a lot of people dining out. Where did they stay? The beaches, as we've seen for much of the pandemic, as doing a little bit more of the heavy lifting, but we do have significant percentages in Fort Myers, Cape Coral, etc. So your visitors are staying all over the county, but these 4 areas is where you have more of the visitors. And then finally, what's your report card? Did they enjoy their trip? The short answer is yes. 95% will recommend a visit to the area. 91% are likely to return. Almost 1 in 6 are likely to return next year or within the next year. So these are great figures. Anytime, again, from what we've seen in our work, not only here, but elsewhere in the state of Florida and nationally, if you're above 90% in those, that's good. Getting them up to 95, that's really great. And then finally, in terms of satisfaction, 96% satisfied with their visit, 94% happy with their customer service. The customer service number is something we're going to keep track of, because everything we're hearing, staffing is an issue. So we'll be monitoring that as we go. But as of this point, great customer service report cards. 45% of the visitors said their accommodations exceeded their expectations, with 97% meeting or exceeding. As a consultant, we always like to look at how many are you exceeding their expectations, because those who exceed their expectations, they are more likely to tell other people about how great of an accommodation it is, how great of a time they had. So those are both wonderful figures. So in a report card, overall, people loved their trip down to the area. And why? In terms of ratings, the warm weather, again, coming from the Midwest and Northeast, I totally get that in January through March. Being a safe destination is still important. It's not upfront like it was maybe 9 months ago, 6 months ago, but it's still part of it. And people are trying to find peace and relaxation. That's something that they're looking for, and they're finding it here. Finally, we always like to get some words from your visitors. I've kind of told you in general what they kind of thought, but here are some descriptions of the area from your visitors' mouths themselves. It's a great place to visit. Clean, sunny beaches and relaxed. Limited commercial areas, all local, one-of-a-kind restaurants and shops. No change. Some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. Beautiful western sky sunsets, great happy hours and restaurants. So That is the quote, which kind of gives you the background of all those positive figures that they just said before. And we sent the full verbatim report the other day, so there's a lot more quotes, but we like to pick out a couple for this. Before I move on to the consumer sentiment, I picked out a few slides, but does anyone have any questions about your January through March visitor? All right, well, we will move on to the consumer sentiment. This time around, it's wave 10. We've been doing it for an entire year now. So you'll get to see some of the questions, you'll get to see a whole year's worth of data, and oh my, how the world has changed in a good way. Number one, is it safe to vacation again? Look at that graph of saying yes. We have jumped from, frankly, when we first started this, we didn't even ask this question because it was worthless to ask. We didn't start asking this till July, where less than half of your visitors said it was safe. Now we have over 70% where say it's safe to travel. I look at any number over 70% because that's a number, I'm not an immunologist, but when herd immunity reaches, for vaccines, is about 70%, we reach herd immunity. We have reached herd willingness to travel. We're above 70%. We are ready as at least amongst your visitors, ready to get back out there. It is safe. The words people associate with travel. I love this because I've been showing this a few times, and I get to point at safe and excited. Where it used to be the big word was scared. And I'm going to point out where scared is now because I had to spend 5 minutes finding it this morning. Scared is no longer the sentiment. Heck, even cautious isn't the sentiment. It is safe. People are excited. We're glad to hear this. Again, this last wave, we started to see this positive trend, but now we are really kind of ramping up to positive. In terms of, again, now we're going to look at behavior. Do you have vacations planned? I'll admit, over all these different waves, I look at the one on the bottom right where it says no vacation planned. If you look at a year ago, 40% of the population, of your visitors, had no vacations planned. And I'll admit, I was actually, back then, I was in the 60% who had a vacation plan. At the same time, to give some context, I had a vacation planned. I didn't think I'd be going on it. And I didn't actually go on it. I'm just a person who always has a vacation plan because that's what I like to do. Now you look at where we're at, 9 out of 10 of your visitors have a vacation plan. Most of them will be having this summer. So this is, again, we haven't genuinely, since this is one question we've asked in every wave, we've never seen it this low since the start of the onset of the pandemic. We did have one new question about advertising because we were starting to see, what do you want to hear? Because we kept hearing from your consumer, safety's still a part of this, but what do you want to hear about? 2/3 of your potential visitors want to hear about the fun, relaxation, adventure, the normal type of marketing. There's still 1/3 of your visitor who's still worried about safety. So I don't want to ever say safety's out, but this step change has happened in the last couple of months, really, where it's kind of, we've made that flip in sentiment to like, hey, let's go out there, let's go get them again. Have you traveled overnight? As you go all the way back, and I noticed the bottom is, the graph doesn't show all the waves, but if we look back to May, basically this time last year, about 1 in 10 people had done an overnight trip in the past month. As we look at it now, almost half. So again, sentiment has changed, behavior has changed. We're not fully back to normal, but as you folks have seen really in the last 6 to 8 weeks, it sounds, everything that we've seen and heard from you and our figures, you're starting to see that with behaviors as well. I remember I was here last month and I was just commenting to everybody, it was great just staying downtown and it being busy again, to other times where it was just kind of like, it's me and 3 other folks downtown. So it's just great to see it. And again, there's more in the report, but I kind of want to touch on some highlights for the sake of your time and then also leave some time for questions. So any other questions on consumer sentiment from your visitors? All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joseph.
Very good. Thank you, Tamara. And I guess that concludes the report of the executive director, and we will move on to new business then at this time. Those are some encouraging numbers, first of all. Thank you very much for putting it together in a way that I think all of us can easily grasp what's going on out there. So under new business, the first item is approval of the second quarter fiscal year 21 budget report. And we will bring up April Benitez. Or Bonnets? Gosh,
Bonnets.
my
Yes.
reading is getting so bad these days. I turned 40 last year and I can't read anything anymore.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
it's a
gonna have to
tricky
get
one.
up there.
You have to have cheaters. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's a line in the sand.
It is right on.
Good morning, everyone. I'm April Bonnets, your fiscal manager, and I'm here to provide you an overview of the operating budget reports for the VCB, the Beach and Shoreline, and sports development. We'll start off with the budget. Overall, we're at a 40% spend rate. Total personnel is less in quarter one because quarter one was 7 payrolls versus the 6, or excuse me, I think it was more. But there was a difference in the number of payrolls. The data processing appears high at 75% for the year to date because of the quarter one annual contract payments that we make. And I think that was all the significant items there. The next slide, we have the Beach and Shoreline budget report. This one's pretty lean, and it's operating right at a 50% spend rate. And the next slide, we've got sports development. Sports development is running at an overall spend rate of 43%. Their personnel is pacing a little slow because of 2 vacant positions. The promotion line item is up for quarter 2 because the quarter 1 events didn't post until quarter 2, and those events included the Roy Hobbs, the Fort Myers Tip-Off, and the Perfect Game. And that concludes the budget reports, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, what questions do we have? Any? All right, seeing none, we will need a motion for acceptance of the budget report. Motion made by Mr. Wells. Do we have a second? Second made by Mr. Wachulis. Any item at all? No? Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your report.
Thank you, everyone.
And Tamara, why don't you go ahead and introduce Nancy for the next item?
Sure. I think Nancy needs no introduction, but welcome to the welcome to the mic, Nancy McPhee, and she is going to share with you, and hopefully we will be formalizing our 2022 Beach and Shoreline funding request.
Good morning and thank you. I want to thank the TDC for all their hard work on the review of these project requests. There were 27, 25 of which were eligible. So this morning I'm going to ask for your formal approval of fiscal year 21-22 funding. But first we need to make legislative findings. Andrea, did you want to comment on anything about legislative findings? So of the 25 projects, 12 need a legislative finding. I'm going to move through them, and you need to approve each of them separately. And then in the end, we'll approve funding recommendations for those 25 projects totaling $10.2 million. So if you're ready, I'll get started with request number 2 from the City of Sanibel, beach erosion monitoring. In order for this project to receive tourist development tax funding, the TDC must make a legislative finding that this project promotes tourism.
Okay, do we have a motion to make that finding?
So moved.
Motion from Rexanne Hossafras. Do we have a second? Second from Pam Cronin. Any discussion on that? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously.
Request number 3 from the town of Fort Myers Beach, beach erosion monitoring. To fund beach erosion monitoring, the TDC must make a legislative finding that this project will improve, maintain, or restore the beach.
Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Mr. Lappy, second from Councilwoman Hossafras. And do we have any further discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously.
Request number 8 is also from the town of Fort Myers Beach for their beach and shoreline maintenance. To fund the replacement of 2 beach utility vehicles and Moby mats, TDC must make a legislative finding that there is a distinct and direct relationship between the expenditure of tourist development tax revenues and the promotion of tourism.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve that legislative finding?
I will move.
Motion from Councilwoman Hossafras, second from Councilman McLean. Any further discussion? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries unanimously.
Request number 10 is from the Barrier Island Park Society for the Port Boca Grand Lighthouse Beach Maintenance Project. To fund the bike racks for bicyclists who visit the beach, TDC must make a legislative finding that this project promotes tourism.
All right, and motion from Mr. Wells. Do we have a second? Second from Councilman McLean. Do we have any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously.
Request number 14 is from Lovers Key State Park for their beach park maintenance project to fund the 2 low-speed vehicles with replacement batteries and 2 UTVs. The TDC must make a legislative finding that these purchases promote tourism.
Very good. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move.
The motion for approval is from Councilwoman Hasafras. The second is from Mr. Wells. Do we have any discussion on this item? Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously.
Request number 18 is from the City of Sanibel for the Bowman's Beach Access Bridge Replacement Project. Tourist development tax proceeds may be committed to this project if the county makes a legislative finding that such expenditure will promote tourism or that the replacement of this bridge will improve, maintain, or restore beach park facilities.
All right. Do we have a motion for approval? Motion for approval from Ms. Cronin, second from Mr. Lappy. Do we have any discussion? Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries unanimously.
Request number 19 from the City of Sanibel is for the changing room rehab at Bowman's Beach Park. Tourist development tax revenues may be used for this project if the TDC makes the legislative finding that such an expenditure will promote tourism or the project will improve, maintain, or restore the beach park facility.
Okay, motion for approval from Mr. Wells. The second is from Mr. Lappy. Do we have any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously.
Request number 21 is from Lee County Facilities Construction and Management for improvements at Bonita Beach Park. To fund the enlarged deck around the restroom, TDC will need to make a legislative finding that this part of the project promotes tourism.
All right, do we have a motion for approval? Motion from approval from Mr. Councilman McLean, and second is from Councilwoman Hasafras. Any discussion? Any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries unanimously.
Project number 22 is also from Lee County Facilities Construction and Management for the Caloosahatchee Creeks Preserve Boardwalk and Observation Deck. The TDC must make a legislative finding that the boardwalk and observation deck services as part of a nature center and that such a project relates to and primarily promotes tourism.
All right, do we have a motion for approval on this item? Motion for approval from Ms. Cronin, second from Mr. Lappy. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries unanimously.
Project number 23 is for the Gasparilla Island Park Administration's Gasparilla Lighthouse Beach Shade Structure. To fund this project using tourist development funds, TDC must make a legislative finding that this project is primarily related to and promotes tourism.
All right, do we have a motion for approval on this item? Motion from Mr. Lappy for approval. Do we have a second? Second from Councilwoman Hasafras. Any discussion? Are there any objections? No objection, that motion carries unanimously.
Oops. Project number 24, Corretion State Park for an ADA kayak and boat launch. To fund this project, TDC must make the appropriate legislative finding that this project relates to and primarily promotes tourism.
All right. We have a motion for approval from Councilman McLean. Do we have a second? Second from Councilwoman Hasafras. Any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously.
And finally, Project 27, Lee County Transit for the Fort Myers Beach Tram Service. Tourist development tax funds may be used for specific tourist-oriented transportation services based on a legislative finding that one of the main purposes of each individual service provided is to attract tourists.
Motion for approval from Councilwoman Hasafras. Do we have a second? Second from Councilman McLean. Any discussion on that? Are there any objections? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, folks. We made it through all of them.
Thank you so much. So finally, our estimated funding for next year is $10.3 million, and we are asking for your recommendation to fund 25 projects at $10,284,410.
Very good. And can we move that as a slate? All the projects will move in one motion?
Yes, the list of projects is in your packet. I don't believe, we didn't include the list, did we, Amanda? No. The list of projects is in your packet, and it will be posted to our partner site at the conclusion of the meeting. But yeah, you move them all at once, the total amount.
Very good. Who wishes?
So moved.
Councilwoman Hasafras makes the motion for approval. Second from Mr. Lappy. Are there any discussion from the councilors? Anything that you wish to discuss or questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? Seeing no objection, that motion carries unanimously. Very
Thank
good.
you. This concludes the beach cycle for this year.
Thank you for all your hard work. Good job. All right. At this time, we will move to 4 council information. Anything, Ms. Pygott?
I always have a little bit of reading in there for you, keep you up to date on a few things, but nothing specific.
All right, then we will begin with Ms. Cronin. Any TDC member items?
I don't have anything today, thank you.
Awesome, well, very
Nothing
good.
today?
Nothing, and Mr. McLean, anything?
Yeah, we've got, I think a lot of you have probably heard about American Idol. Estero is lucky. We have a 16-year-old, brand new 16-year-old, just turned during the American Idol contest. Lives in Bellaterra, and American Idol has reached out to Estero several weeks ago with a basic plan, and that plan has exploded a little bit more than what we initially looked at. So we've got it, the home visit's going to be in Estero. There's going to be a visit to Cypress Lakes High School, which is where Casey currently goes to high school. And then it's going to wrap up at Cypress Beach, right by the pier by Times Square, I think about 6 to 7 o'clock on May 18th. And I want to thank Tamara, Lee County, for the beach portion of this. It's a big project, and there's a lot of people involved and a lot of complexity with traffic control and all that. So from Estero, we're very excited about this, and we're also very thankful for the capability that exists within Lee County to be able to, I think, pull off a really great event. I think it'll be good for tourism and recognition for both Lee County and Estero. I just want to be a little cautious. This is tentative, that on Sunday night, we need all of you to watch American Idol, and at about 9:45, you better get your fingers on your phone and your apps and vote 10 times for Casey. I got a news flash this morning that there are 5 candidates right now. One actually dropped out, I guess, this morning for whatever issues that occurred. So now they're down to 4, so I'm not sure how they're going to handle that, but get there and vote. So if she becomes one of the top 3, then the hometown visit occurs. So we've got a lot of activity happening right now, and we're ready to push the button. If she doesn't make the top 3, at least from the Estero side, we're gonna recognize her, give the city, the key to the city and all that. But we're pretty confident she's gonna make the top 3. So push your buttons on your text. That's all I've got.
Really good, very good. Any comments or questions, concerns? Very good, thank you. Thank you for sharing that news with us too. It'll be good for our area to be promoted nationwide, and who knows, maybe even, I'm sure that show has an international following as well. I watched it a long time ago. I didn't
it's kind of
keep up with it, unfortunately. We had previously, I mean, this is going back a long time ago, 10 years, Baby V, Vonzell Solomon made it into the finals there, so, yeah.
And I think that person went to Cypress Lakes High School, I believe also.
Oh, yeah.
With the same teacher.
Yeah? Oh, really?
Yeah, so we're
Wow.
going to try and recognize her or him. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Is it a man or what? I'm not sure.
I don't know who the teacher is, but we do have great arts schools here, Cypress Lake and North Fort Myers. My wife went to Cypress Lake Academy for the Arts, so she knows a little bit about that. I'm sure she'll be pulling for the home team there too. So, very good. Well, thank you. How about Mr. Wachulis? Anything?
Shout out to Captains with Clean Water. Obviously, they're great advocates for our water quality. They did a great job at getting the governor down last night. I had the pleasure of attending the meeting with the governor. He's obviously in full support of whatever he can do to help. There's a lot of warning signs out there. The lake, if you go back to 2018, the lake is two feet higher than in 2018, and there's more algae in the lake right now. So there's obviously a great concern. Army Corps is developing their plan for the next 15 years of how they manage the lake. There's a lot of concerning where the direction they're going. It's not a benefit to our area. So obviously, City of Sanibel is sending a letter out. Holly, do you want to talk about the letter? I'm sorry? You want to come up and talk about the letter Sanibel's sending to the governor?
We actually...
I would defer to the chair.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Our chairman of our board as well is working on a very similar letter. I know he sent that via email to the commissioners yesterday to let us know he's working on a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers that will talk about our concerns with the Lake Okeechobee System Operation Manual. They call it LOSOM. And you're right. I mean, this is how the lake will be managed going forward. And it needs to take into account everything that's been done to improve the stability of the Herbert Hoover Dike and really, honestly, just send less water our way. Just that simple. So, yeah, very good. Thank you, Mr. Witchulis. Yeah, anything, Mr. Wells?
Sure, it's obviously no secret, but we have a lot of tourists coming here, and we're to almost every property in Lee County struggling to find employees. So any way we can advocate making anybody around the nation aware of that. We've got a great place down here to come work. Summer's going to be crazy busy, and plenty of jobs you can come get. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Lappy?
Well, not so much on the national scale, but we at Tween Waters, we're going to do a promotion on the beach this Saturday. Sheena Brooke, who was currently on The Voice way back in the day as a local gal, she's going to do a concert for us on the beach in Tween Waters this Saturday. So it'll be towards sunset, around 6:30 it'll start and kind of go right through sunset. So it's kind of our first attempt at this, and we'll see how it goes, but it should be kind of fun. So if you're not doing anything on a Saturday and you want to come out and spend some time and watch the sunset, there is a small charge to come and be at the concert, but it should be fun.
Excellent. Well, we wish you much luck with that. That'll be great.
Thanks.
Very good. All right. Well, is there anything else for the good of the order then? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you, folks. Great meeting.
Wow. I love that.
So I heard that they went into Crescent Beach, but I didn't hear what it caused that.